Hello and welcome to the Real Deal Trio podcast, where we dive deep into the world of real estate, business, and personal growth. I'm your host, Yahya Chatani, joined by my esteemed co-hosts, Mohit Badlani and Phil Mariani. Together, we bring you a wealth of knowledge and expertise to help you navigate through the complexities of the real estate market, unlock business success, and cultivate a life of balance and fulfillment. So get ready for insightful conversations, actionable advice, and also a whole bunch of inspiration. So let's dive in.
What is up, everyone? How's everyone doing today?
What's going on? Good evening, boys.
Yo.
Good evening.
The weather's getting nice, man. It's 66 degrees outside. Beautiful weather.
Great weather here in Florida. Yeah, great weather here in Florida. You are right.
Crazy, man. It was like tornado watches over here in our city up until 5 o'clock last night. I'm like, tornadoes? The day before it was like 85 degrees.
I know, right?
Beautiful. Like, what's going on?
Welcome to our bipolar weather in Florida.
We still don't get snow, though.
We don't get snow, though. Texas got snow.
We don't get snow.
We don't get it.
Yeah, we get hail, though. We get hailstorms here.
Yeah, I think it was in 2021, man. Like, the worst hail I experienced was in Sanford. My car had hail damage in Florida.
Yeah.
I was like, that's
we get really bad hailstorms. I mean, sometimes it's the size of golf balls.
Like, imagine being outside.
But that's not our topic for today. Weather's not our topic. Florida weather is not our topic for today. But today's topic we're going to go into is our a little bit of our story and a little bit of Phil's story as well. But it's the immigrant story of buying real estate in the United States. When you're an immigrant coming to America, what is that like for you to purchase real estate? Me and Yaya both are not first generation. We both were born overseas and we moved here. Our kids are first generation. My parents actually moved here a while back. So me and Yaya's parents, I guess, moved here a long time back too. I don't know. Your parents were back. You were coming back and forth in a different way. So we'll dive into your story first later. But basically, we're going to be talking about our immigrant story and what it is like to purchase real estate as an immigrant here, or what it's like, that whole process, the mindset behind the immigrant purchasing a real estate, and Phil's story as well. I mean, Phil's Italian background. He'll go back to his heritage, but there's some really cool stuff you'll learn about Phil today, about his background. And obviously, we're going to talk about his parents and grandparents purchasing their first real estate and what that was like for them, if he remembers, or if I'm sure he reached out to his parents and found out a little story. So he's going to give you some really cool nuggets about that. And we're also going to dive into what it is like working with immigrants that are purchasing real estate. And we all three have worked with immigrants on a daily basis.
Daily basis, yeah.
They're the ones that are coming around and purchasing homes. I mean, not saying Americans don't purchase homes, but I think immigrants have the mindset of buying real estate here rather than renting. They don't like to rent. They like to purchase. They like to buy. They like to own. And we're going to talk about that story in a little while. So, Yaya, tell us a little bit about your story.
So I'm going to jump on first what you just talked about, Mo. Like, you're right. Like, renting, I think in a lot of countries, we don't realize that. If you live in the US, and if you were born here, you would never have exposure to this. But a lot of countries, it's impossible for the middle class to buy a home. It's only for the privileged, the rich. And I don't know if, Mo, you've been, outside and seen this, but most people live
absolutely
their entire life renting, like generations. They're not able to purchase. And in a country like Pakistan, right? Let me give you an example. We think inflation is crazy here, right? So I was in Pakistan in December. Inflation there is in the 20%, like 22% or so. And think about that, 22%. And mortgage rates or home loan rates are between 15, 18%, 20%. So with a rate like that, how can you afford to buy a home if you're in the middle class? So it's not even, I think, a forethought for most people. But when you come to a country like the United States and you have programs like 0 down, 3.5% down payment assistance, seller pays for your closing costs, all these crazy programs, it really has that feature that people used to talk about, the American dream. And recently, there were rumors that the American dream is dying. It's no longer there. People can't afford homes. There's big investment companies, and I'm sure Phil can attest to this. A lot of these big hedge funds, they come in and buy real estate like a joke, like $20 billion, $30 billion. So if I looked at stats last week from the MBA, the Mortgage Bankers Association, and they said that right now in this market where people are complaining about higher rates and prices, 33% of purchase is being done by investors. So are they crazy? These are people with smart money, man, and they're buying these homes. And then about 25% of transactions are still cash. That's a pretty big and significant purchase. And first-time home buyers has actually dropped by 3% in the last 60 days. So to give you a perspective on that, Mo, like when I first came here, I didn't know anything about real estate. Like I was not even from the industry. But when I was in Malaysia, my dad used to be a developer and he was into it. At the time, I wasn't into it. But when I moved here, I reached out to an agent. And this is not a very good story for agents. But I reached out and I'm like, hey, I want to learn about how I can buy a home. And I had just moved here. So the agent sends me a lender and says, hey, call this person and get pre-qualified. I said, okay, but I don't have credit. I don't have income. I have nothing. I just moved here. I have some cash, but I don't know if that's going to work. And she insisted on me getting pre-approved, even though I told her that. I told the lender the same thing, that, hey, I'm looking for work. I don't know what to do. And I just want to get an idea. I got zero help. All I was getting pestered to do an application. And I'm like, dude, I have no credit. What are you going to do? Anyway, I got a job, worked for 2 years, got a W-2, made decent income. But in the first 6 months, these guys, their follow-ups were pretty bad. And it shocked me to see that people that have to go through so many hoops to educate themselves and license themselves had such little concern about the buyer, but they were more concerned about how much they're going to make. And there was zero help, like no follow-up in setting goals and teaching me that, hey, look, if you can get a credit score of, let's say, 650 or 700, you can make this much money, you can have this much debt. Then in 2 years, you have 2 W-2s, you're going to be able to buy a home worth this much. None of that. And one day, guys, I get an email from the agent, and I think it was an accidental email I was copied on. She asked the lender, hey, what's going on with this lead? And the lender says, oh, it's a dead lead. And the realtor says, why? It's like, I've been telling the guy to get pre-approved, doesn't want to listen. And I'm looking at the communication going on there. And I jumped in and I'm like, guys, you do realize I had no income. I had no job. I came to you for help. And all you did was pester me for an application, knowing well I have no credit. So that was not a great experience, which got me to get my real estate license. I get it. And then I realized why people buy real estate in this country, including immigrants. You see, a lot of people, when they move here, they rent. And renting is very hard. But the thing with renting is you don't build any equity. You don't appreciate your wealth. You have no chance to develop yourself equity in a couple of years. And you don't have any ownership. There's no pride in that. And you're very restricted. You can't really make any changes or do anything with the house. And a lot of immigrants like to personalize their homes, right, Mo? They love to do things, add things, remove things. So it makes it very hard, right? And we have a lot of people over. Like any immigrant family they will look for 4 or 5 bedroom homes. They want to have a room for an uncle, a room for an aunt, a room for some cousin that's never
everything's extended family. Everybody's extended family,
right? Yeah. And they want to cook like massive amount of foods, and they use a lot of garlic, like Italians do. Like it's a whole thing. So you have to own your home. Yeah. And the truth is, when you're working with an immigrant, obviously, somebody who's been to the US for the first time, don't know how credit works, don't know how lending works. They're very closed off, I would say. Like I was, a little narrow-minded. Like, I don't know, you're trying to rip me off. Because in other countries, it is a little bit like that. And lenders are known for being predatory in some instances.
Right.
So it was quite an intimidating experience. But thankfully, I had the knowledge of, real estate and mortgage, and I had a lot of great people after my prior experience that educated me, taught me. And when I learned that, I understood what the immigrant mindset is. And right now, based on the people that I know that are buying properties, are a lot of investors. They're doing fix and flips. They go in properties, buy them, fix and flip themselves without having any experience because they know they can get a deal, and that's their, bread and butter. But to give it back to you, Mo, I think it's a really cool experience to be able to give back to a community where you struggled, you persevered, and you went through the hardship. And now if I can make it easy for everybody else and tell them, hey, look, don't do this, don't do that. If you just moved here, follow the process. It's going to take you a year, 2 years. If you're self-employed, you could do this, you could do that. So it really gave me an opportunity to, I think, become a resource for the, I would say, immigrant community.
Nice, very nice. Tell me a little bit about of, of working with a immigrant from Pakistan. Let's say from your own culture. How is it like working with someone from that region and helping them buy their first home?
It's quite fulfilling, to be honest, man. It's very nice as a feeling because you know that they are at a disadvantage. They don't know a lot of stuff, and I am their only resource. So they're putting pretty much a lot of their trust in me, and it's a very heavy feeling when somebody's like, "Hey, man, I'm putting all my trust in you. Help me."
Right.
At that point, it's like, okay, you don't know anything. Like
Right.
you have no idea.
No clue what's going on.
Right. So I have to take every little step, and it's time consuming. It's tedious, but it's very fulfilling because when you do it and these guys end up in a home, you end up making more of a friendship than a client relationship, which generally happens. But it's a little more special because they really feel what you've done. And as they learn by living here and, going through their life, that, wow, what you did for them really meant something. So it's a very good experience.
What about an immigrant that has lived here for quite some time, knows the process, knows everything, comes to you and buying their third or fourth home? Feel like working with that person?
That doesn't feel any different than working with a local American. Like,
Yeah.
It's pretty similar. They've been here, they know the system, they know what they need to do. And I think that's the cool part of being in the US because everything is pretty cookie cutter here. It's pretty standard. There's systems, there's infrastructures, there's systems in place. So it's exactly the same. Like you could go to Phil, I could go to you, I could go to me. There's a process we all follow. We'll follow it differently, but we will have to follow a certain process that is outlined by our licensing systems or the industry itself. So it's pretty standard.
Very cool. Very cool. Cool.
What about yourself, man? How do you feel on your side if you work with somebody from India, let's say?
I mean, it's different. If they're first time home buyers, like you just said, they put all their trust in you, right? I mean, especially if they're like fresh off the boat, maybe been here about a year, maybe 2 years, trying to work and work their way up. If they're just middle class and working their way up to having some savings to purchase a house, calling their family, their wife or their kid from India over. So that whole process, they're naive, very, very naive. But you just want to sit with them and be like, hey, you want to hold their hand throughout the whole process. You love that process because you know what? It's a huge accomplishment and they're so much more appreciative at the end.
It's fulfilling.
It's a very fulfilling feeling. They know they're going to have a lot of people in their ear and they want to only listen to you because you've been there from the start, from the beginning for them, helping them out. So, and you've only given them good advice, right? You never try to be malicious with it either, or have like that salesman breath or that commission breath with them either, because you yourself put your guard down with them, right? Because you put yourself in their place and be like, hey, I want to help you out. I want to appreciate this moment with you.
Man, I love that. I think I'm going to go off topic slightly and I want you guys to jump in here.
Sure.
But I think one of the best lessons in my professional career that I've learned from some of the best sales trainers, the first thing that I learned was, this is $1 million advice that this guy gave me. He said, when you do what you do, make sure you love it enough that you're willing to suffer through it and last as long as you can. Because people that suffer the most, last the longest, usually end up winning the most. And the purpose is, you're going in an industry to serve people, right? We're all servants. If we did not have a servant mindset, we would not be good in our industry. We're not, like you said, commission breath. That's the worst thing because it's all about you. Nobody cares about me. Nobody cares about my company. Nobody cares about my product. What people care about is how it makes them feel, what it does for them, how it benefits them, short-term, long-term, and services them, right? So as long as we adhere by these rules, we're successful. But people that are only like, hey, man, just about me, I just want to make money. That's a very, first of all, it's a negative mindset. You're not taking care of anybody. And how would you like that if you were on the other end and somebody did that to you? Not very much, I think. So, no, man, I love what you said. What about Phil, man?
Mm-hmm. And not only that, I just want to go back a little bit of my story, because I really want to focus on Phil's story today, because Phil's story starts in a really cool place.
Wow.
Phil's ancestry story starts in a really cool place. So we'll go back. I mean, not saying that ours don't, but his is pretty cool. I mean,
that's cool.
His is, I would say, one step better than ours. I mean, I do want to tell you my first my parents' first purchase, because it was such a cool feeling, and it was such an accomplishment, right? Like, you come to this country with only so much in your pockets, right? You hear that story. I only came to this country with $100 in my pocket, or $20 in my pocket, or whatever the case. My dad was transferred here because of work, so he's not like he'd left with no money. So he was already, he came here with a job. So he was transferred here back in the early 80s. He was transferred here to manage a few stores and whatnot, a few retail stores that was owned in Dubai at that time. And he had moved from India to Dubai to support his family, because at that time India wasn't a good place for, at the time, economically, to provide, especially if you live in a joint family, which my dad did, and trying to provide for 10, 15, 20 people. It's kind of crazy. So you do have to go overseas and make overseas money. So the closest place is Dubai, which is 3 hours away by flight. But he didn't fly there. He took a boat there and probably threw up 1 million times, he told me. But he got there, and then, building relationships, worked his way up the ladder, and his company decided to move him to the United States. He really didn't, want to come here in the United States. He just said, okay, I'm coming to help manage these stores. And then the guy's like, I'm going to bring you back here to Dubai because I want you to manage Dubai too. So as soon as he came here, he loved the American experience, the American lifestyle, the education, because I was just born not too long ago. He liked the entire system. Obviously, he liked the green as well. The almighty dollar is very powerful if you're an immigrant and you're making that, a few $100s a week in the early 80s. It's pretty good money, a few $1,000s a month. So he was doing that. He got transferred here, and then decided to stay put. And once he stayed put in 85, 85, he moved here. 86, we joined him. 89, we moved to Chicago, where he owned his own store. From there on, all the way up to 98. From 89 to 98, he worked his way to save enough to purchase a house. And that's what he wanted to do. That those 8, 9, 10 years of struggle in Chicago on his own, that was his first goal, is, hey, I need to get my kids in a good school, and B, I need to buy a house. I cannot be renting. I can't be throwing this money away. And he would tell me this, like, hey, this money is going to rent. Yes, this is a roof over your head. We're all good here, but we're gonna cut back on a few things, because I need to save some money to put you guys into a house. And we all did what we needed to do to get into that house, and we all sacrificed. Not even much, not that much. I mean, we did what we needed to do, what was necessary, and we all wanted to go into a house, and we bought a house in Skokie. We lived in Skokie for a while, for about a year and a half. Then we left. We sold it because my dad had a better opportunity to come to Florida, and then we bought houses here. So I mean, that was always the case. So always trying to buy, never trying to rent. And I think that's always the immigrant mindset, is coming here, always, like you mentioned earlier, always trying to buy and never rent. If you can own something and say it's yours, it means a lot more, and it means a lot more to your kids, because that's what they look at. If I own this, I can pass this on to my next of kin, my kids. My kids will use this land, or they'll use this property for betterment of themselves. So that's how they look at it. Now, Phil's story. Now, Phil.
I don't know, man. Hopefully I can I can come through here. You're really building it up here.
Mo's setting Phil up for failure. He's like, oh yeah, Phil's story is cool, but listen to me.
No.
Really
Phil's
story here, but...
right. No, Phil's got a big story.
That was very cool, man. I never knew that about you, man. I see Mo's like a little secret agent hiding all these cool stories about himself, revealing on podcasts. Right? Like, I'll wait till I'm on a podcast.
Dude, we're finding new stuff about you. This is the best way to find new stuff about us. Yeah?
Well, there's some stuff we can't show on camera, but hey.
Chew that. So, Phil.
So, come on, Phil.
Yeah.
Let us know your secrets, bro. Spill the beans.
So I'm essentially, so I'm not an immigrant, but I'm fourth generation. So my great-grandfather on my father's side immigrated from Italy. And so the cool thing I was sharing with Mo earlier today is the names of my great-grandfather and great-grandmother are actually on the wall at Liberty Island in New York when they immigrated. So back in the day, when the immigrants, they immigrated from Italy and different places, and they came, obviously, New York was a big stop in Manhattan and on Liberty Island. So they had record of my great-grandparents immigrating from Italy to New York, which was pretty cool. So I think about 5 or so years ago, we obviously you guys know I'm born and raised Long Island, New York.
Yeah.
If you already haven't heard the accent there.
But what was the last name that was on if you don't mind sharing that? So people can go on Liberty Island and find it. Our listeners can go and find it if they're ever in New York.
So we took my daughter there. We had about 5 or 6 years ago, and my dad's like, "Yeah, your grandparents are your great grandfather is on the wall." So he actually was there, and we went to go look at them up, and it was a really cool feeling. So we actually looked on the wall and we found them, and it was really cool to think, just like, wow, like my great grandfather, how many years ago, immigrated from Italy, and his name is on the wall today. It was just kind of a real moment. Like, how cool is that to say, your bloodline is on the wall? So his name is Fiorucci Mariani was his name. So I think that's really very, very Italian too, like your Fiorucci shirts or something back in the 70s, I think was pretty big, but I just thought that was really cool, man, to just, be able to like, wow, like my great grandfather, my name is on that wall. And just to think how many years ago, it's kind of crazy, and then, so I'm fourth generation. So, but yeah, essentially the Italian, very similar. I think all immigrants, they wanted to, live that American dream. They wanted to come to the U.S., to America, to have the, more opportunity than, like we always say, right, the land of opportunity, right? And to be able to live that American dream and have more and better and provide for their family and leave some type of legacy. And extremely hard workers, our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, right? That's how this country was born, as was just pure hard work. And so, obviously in the Italian, kind of culture, it's like, they don't believe in debt, everything was like, buy cash, and I always kid around. I joke with Mo, one of my favorite comedians, Sebastian Maniscalco, if you've ever heard him, he always says, Italians, buy cash. He's like, and it's true, growing up, I remember when I was a kid, we didn't know nothing about credit cards. My parents paid all the bills with like money orders from what I remember when I was growing up, everything was like cash, money orders, checks, and, no credit cards, no financing, just except for a mortgage. But, so a cool thing is my grandfather that passed away some years ago. So he purchased his first house in Long Island, New York, and he bought it cash. He had him and his brother. They actually owned a live poultry chicken market in Brooklyn, New York. Many, many, many years ago. That's where they went in every day. They traveled from Long Island to Brooklyn.
No way.
They had a live poultry chicken market. I actually visited once or twice when I was really young. And it was I guess, an eye-opening experience, you want to call it, because I remember my dad. I remember going in, and then there was like this big yard full of just chickens running around. And I remember like one of the guys working is grabbing the chicken and then putting them upside down in the barrel. And I'm like, oh my God. And I'm probably like 10 years old or something like that. So I said, Dad, I said, we really got to kill the chickens. I'm like, why do we put them upside down in a barrel? So they had to drain and then, to drain their blood. And I guess I experienced a little bit of how a live poultry chicken market works. And, then after a while, their legs just like, like just straight up in the air. But that was interesting. But yeah, that was where my grandfather worked extremely hard. They never went out. They never did, they cooked at home, never went and did fancy dinners or nothing like we do today. Lived very modest life. Um, you know, uh, didn't do anything extravagant. Didn't even really do any vacations, from what, my dad told me, but just work to, to provide for, their kids. And then, he bought a house cash. And, when my grandfather passed away, my dad inherited the house, and believe it or not, he still has the house today. Um, he has it as rented out as investment property, but I think the house was purchased in the 50s, I believe, what my dad told me, and still has it today in the family. So I'm like, wow. I'm like, I was telling my wife about it. She didn't realize. I said, no. I said, this house, my dad was, he was born and raised in this house, my father, with his brothers. And I said, so just the history growing up in that house, born and raised there, then moving out, starting a family of his own. And, I remember my dad, he had purchased a house. And again, he always taught me, save your money, buy a house, save your money, buy a house. Always had the same, mindset of not renting and owning. And, me and my wife were fortunate to purchase our first home at a young age. And I guess kind of what led us into real estate today. And I think my father, and my mother, they purchased their first home, I think somewhere in like probably the mid to late 70s. And that's why he used to tell me, like, the interest rates we got today, that was nothing. They said it was like double the rates that they had back then. But obviously the homes were cheaper, right?
Yeah.
But so I remember, growing up and always owning a house. I remember my parents always owned a house. And that's pretty much the only debt they really had was just a mortgage. And so that's a little bit, of that story. But how I can really relate to it is, I was telling, Mo, you guys probably know, is my wife's an immigrant. So my wife is an immigrant of Russia. She actually left Russia as a Jewish refugee, and she immigrated to the States. She actually, when her and her family immigrated, they actually, I think they first left and they spent some time in Austria and Italy as well, which is pretty cool. And then finally immigrating to the States, the United States. And so she had a really good story of her growing up. And so today, because of her story and her success, she has quite a bit of following of clients that, move from Russia. She gets a lot of referrals for Russian business, and obviously some of the obstacles obviously is the language, the communication, and, not be able to read, or so and understand the contracts and the different legal, systems and things here. So they rely on Yulia heavily for that. So definitely communication, but same thing with that mentality is they just can't, they find it like, hard to believe that in order to purchase something to have credit, you have to be in debt. So that's the crazy thing about it. They find like it crazy that, hey, like, they find it crazy that hey, I have to like, get credit cards. I have to be in debt in order to have a credit score to buy something. I just can't buy cash because, so they do understand that. They find it crazy, but because of that, they know and understand what they got to do. So most of the clients that my wife works with, they have solid credit scores and they have cash. They got money. So a lot of times they have the money, as you know, you could probably relate to this, is they have money sitting at home, maybe under the mattress and not in the bank where it has to be seasoned, right? So, and then the reason why is because in the banking system in Russia, they're very scared that that money can be lost. So they're a little skeptical sometimes of putting their money in the bank here in the States because thinking that what if something happens? Because I guess maybe they didn't have insurance back in and stuff like that. So a lot of the mindset was this, was just that fear of, keeping the money on me, not in the bank, putting it somewhere where it could be stolen or lost or somebody can take it because they worked so hard for it. So a lot of that mindset they had to overcome. But usually when they come here, they got money and they got credit scores. And it's definitely, for my wife, has been one of the most satisfying thing to help somebody, again, looking to leave from Russia to come here to have a better life for their kids. And a lot of them have young children and provide and have opportunity, to purchase their own home and even investment. Some of them have come and purchased a second property now with my wife as investment, but it's a great satisfying feeling to help them achieve that American dream and purchase their very first home in America. So
Dude,
that's a good story.
you brought up something very, very cool. I had to jump in here. So the money under the mattress.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk about that. Yeah.
Guys, no joke. So, in seriousness, though, what Phil said, absolutely true. Banks need something that's called seasoning. Now, it's not salt and pepper. What it really means is your money's got to sit in an account for a certain amount of time, And I had this conversation last month with a borrower, self employed person, good business, everything's great. How much are you putting down? 20%. Where's the cash? Oh, it's in my locker. What is it doing in your locker? Oh, well, I don't put it in the bank. Why don't you put it in the bank? Because I don't trust the bank. I'm like, okay, I can relate to that. But you know that banks are FDIC assured, most of them, up to 250,000. He's like, yeah, but what if I have more? I'm like, make different accounts. Have 10 different accounts and put $250,000 each account. They're all approved. But the problem here, guys, is if you are pre-approved right now and you want to put an offer in with, let's say, Phil tomorrow, if the money is sitting under your mattress, I can't use it. It's got to be in an account for a certain amount of time, at least 2 months. It's got to be consistently sitting there. If it's not, most banks, if you deposit a 20 grand amount, will have to report it. And it's a silent report, right? It's an STR, which is submitted, and it states that it's 10 grand, but I'm just saying as an example, if it exceeds a certain amount, I can't say exact amounts just because I'm not trying to steer people and teach them fraud. As a lender, I got to be careful.
I know,
but hey, the point is, when you do that, if you suddenly go to a bank and deposit like 15, 20 grand, and you don't have a history of such deposits, a bank has to report a suspicious activity report, SAR. And it's nothing bad, but it's a Bank Secrecy Act and U.S. Patriot Act that they have to just do that just to make sure there's no money laundering, there's no placement of funds, layering, all these things are not happening, right? You may not be doing it, but for a bank, they have to be precautious about this. So if you're serious, and like Phil said, if you're an immigrant and you have the money, just be honest with the bank. Don't try to, put 5,000, 2,000, 3. That looks worse than you going in and saying, hey, listen, I just, have my money. I have never put it in a bank. This is the source of funds. Here you go. So just want to touch on that a little bit. But go ahead, Phil. I love your story.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that's one of the biggest things right there. Kind of just educate them and say, listen, this is how it works here. We can't just give them cash. It has to be the bank. It has to be sourced, so just educating them on the process has been huge. But obviously a little skeptical, but obviously word of mouth, and my wife has had a lot of success work with them and helping immigrants from Russia get into their homes, and we helped some now buying investment property. So just again, it's a great satisfying feeling when I say thank you so much, Julie, for helping me, and having somebody like you says that don't know any better and they're putting their trust in you to do it, because again, they don't know any better. So that's so it's kind of cool. So I work, I relate with my wife every day on that. I see what she goes through, and obviously communicating a lot of times that she has to communicate both ways. She'll have to communicate between the client and the loan officer and title company and different people as well. Sometimes it's hard to find Spanish, not Spanish, but Russian speaking loan officers or title company people. So a lot of times she has to, and the thing about it is my wife can read and write in Russian. She left when she was 12 years old, but she never learned how to talk like real estate or numbers kind of talk in Russian. So
financial talk.
Yeah, like financial talk, which is totally different. So sometimes she has a hard time with that, and she'll have to like call her grandmother or grandfather, and ask her some questions. But but so even though she runs into some, but she always gets it done. She always gets it done,
Right. Well, that was really cool stories, man. Everybody has a story. At the end of the day, we all have a story. We all come from somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. And we all have a dream of purchasing real estate at some point in our lives. So this is a little bit of ours, and what we do to help our new immigrants that come to this country, and immigrants that have been here for a long time. We love to help everyone. So hit us up if you guys ever need anything, if you need any advice or anything. At the end of the show, you guys get the full rundown of how to get in touch with us. So please reach out to us. All right. Thank you for joining us today on the Real Deal Trio podcast, where we dive deep into the exciting worlds of real estate, business, and mastering that sweet life balance. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback helps us continue delivering content that matters to you. Stay pumped for our upcoming episodes, jam-packed with expert insight, game-changing strategies, and Florida real estate. For more exclusive contents and behind-the-scene action, follow us on Facebook, search for The Real Deal Trio group page, and for Instagram at The Real Deal Trio Pod. And for YouTube, search for The Real Deal Trio Podcast. We will have all these links to our social media account and some more in the description. We would love to be your go-to experts for all your real estate needs in Florida. Shoot us an email, realdealtrio@gmail.com. Until next time, keep balancing the hustle, the deals, and the moments that make life truly extraordinary. This is the Real Deal Trio Podcast, signing off.